Hey traders, Raghee here. Happy Monday, everybody. Let's get a quick audio and video check in. All right, should be good to go. Great to see everybody. Hope everyone had an awesome weekend. Spent a little time away from the charts. And now we're ready to get back to it as we cruise through. This is OpEx week, by the way. So this is the third Friday of the month. That means those monthly expirations are coming up this Friday on the 15th. And if you take a look at our open swings, let's go ahead and jump on over there. We'll kick that off, kick our morning off with just kind of a reminder of what we're dealing with here this week. So August 15 is what we call the third Friday of the month, options expiration, monthly options. Now, yes, there are options that expire every day, those 0 days to options expiration. There are weeklies. There are all sorts of them. But if you take a look at the open interest, and take note of that, because if you've never done a deep dive into the implications of any expiration, but expiration specifically on the third Friday, where there is a lot of OI, a lot of open interest, you're going to see just how impactful that is going to be to the follow through the closer and closer we get to Friday. So that's definitely something we'll talk a lot about, because we have quite a few swings open. Last week, we closed out that winner in GE. On Friday, we took out a second target for almost now about a 300% winner in Google. We hit an optional target for the Schwab calls that we have. We hit our first target, the T1 on RTX. So this is where we sit right now in the Sector Secrets Mastery with the positions that we have on. And all of these, in terms of trigger, Schwab triggered on the 7th. RTX was also on the 7th. So these are relatively fresh new trades. BKR, which is probably our only problem child, triggered on the 6th. And then Google, our oldest trade in the book, I say old, but that trade was set up on the 31st and set up on the 1st. So we set that up on a Thursday. I believe it triggered on a Friday. So that's our oldest position, just over a week old. So we've got some really nice movement, considering that this is still the summertime doldrums. And there's been all this tariff looming over, tariff hangover continuing. And yet there are some really good setups that are triggering and following through. Ultimately, oh my gosh, my mom fell this morning. Bear with me one moment here, gang. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, I walked in and mom fell this morning, so she's okay. She's okay, but I got my phone on today in case she needs anything. I'll have to go help her out in about 15 minutes for just a minute. All right. No hedgie has to deal with the puppy barking and the mom falling, right? This is why I respect retail traders more than any other kind of trader, because look, most people, she's okay. No, I really appreciate that, gang. No, thank you. She's okay. But this is why I respect retail traders, because most other kind of traders get to go hole up in their, air conditioned, fleece wearing environments, and they just get to sit around in the world that is trading, and good for them, right? But the rest of us, retail traders, we have stuff that's going on. We have other things we have to do. And I will always, always root for and respect retail traders more than any of these people go on and on about hedgies and full-time traders. Look, there's life that happens, right? And she is okay, though. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So this is what we've got in terms of positions. Let's talk about what we've got coming up this morning. There is a press conference in the White House. The President Trump's going to be speaking. I don't know what this Trump presser is going to be, but I'll treat it like I would a Powell presser, right? There's probably going to be far more topics covered in that press conference and simply what's slated to be the main topic. That's where these press conferences go. That's probably going to do a lot in terms of potentially upending the morning. So we'll have to keep a really close eye on that. But we are sitting up pretty near Friday highs. Equities are still pretty strong. And another thing that I noted as I saw some of the movement from Friday, semis seem to be out of the woods. I wanted to give this a little bit of room to move, not because there was any issue with the setups, but I wanted to make sure that we're, instead of waking up to gap ups, which is really what we saw Wednesday to Thursday and strength on Friday, I did not want to wake up to a gap down. Remember, when we think about trading and when we think about account growth trading, it's not how much could we make if we're right, it's can we control risk if we're wrong. And the size of the gap, what I always remind myself of, you can see the way on the 6th to the 7th, the way that we had that gap up. I always ask myself, well, what if it was the other way? Because this is a very news driven sector at the moment. It seems though we've got a path forward with how the tariffs are going to be handled. Apple seemed to have sort of shed light on how that's going to be, and semis are continuing to rally. So we get to do something really cool. We get to put this sector back on the watch list. And when we do our watch list building later on today for our swing trades at around 10:30 a.m. Eastern, we're probably going to see some different sectors and a different look in our weekly watch list. And then, of course, I'll alert that watch list out to members, because that's ultimately where our next set of trades, swing trades specifically, are going to come from. So semis seem to be out of the woods. Bitcoin was higher over the weekend. Grains seem to be on the move, especially soybeans. So we can look at ETFs like SOYB and even the agribusiness move. We can definitely keep an eye on that. Again, this is all deals, tariff deals, U.S., China. Gold unwind continues, whether that's uncertainty around tariffs, or we saw gold make a pretty big move to the downside on Friday, as did crude, as it does seem as the pressure cooker of Russia, Ukraine seems to be. Again, it's all perception. I'm not here to be any geopolitical expert, but I'm looking at the way different headlines are creating different price moves. And it does seem that gold unwind continues with some of that pressure being let off. So I'm in no rush to look at gold at the moment. However, it is looking about as good as it's looked in a while. It is a large candle down, but it is in the daily price movement range. So one thing we could do with this movement lower in gold, rather than get into gold, which is still under pressure, we could put on smaller position size in gold, but we could also look at GDX. And that's one thing that I might be more interested in. What are the names that are outperformers in the gold miners, or maybe even metals with XME? So we don't have to go into the commodity necessarily. We can take a look at what's going on at the stock level in terms of gold miners. So I do like that as a potential setup as we are moving forward with some of that narrative around gold. But it is a larger candle. It's not a technical pullback per se. It really does seem to be continued to be driven by news. But this is the first time we have a few things on the swing trading side of things that I like, which is the 5 green in a row. We got the 5 green top tier candles, and we're in the daily price movement range. But by the way, we had that on Friday too. So let's not presume gold is out of the woods. We'll probably focus on GDX names first. All right, pre-market, what do we have? All bells about to ring. All 4 indices are below the previous session close. When you see PSC, that is an indicator that you can find in the files section of the trading room, and it's going to note where the previous session close was, where the overnight open, overnight high, overnight low were. And you can put that on your chart. It's just another set of psychological levels, sentiment levels, really, or what I like to call is a line in the sand. If we're above the previous session close, there tends to be a little bit more bullish sentiment. If we're below the previous session close, like we are now, there tends to be a little bit more bearish sentiment. So to kick off the morning, again, sentiment can shift very quickly. And we certainly have a reason for sentiment shift potentially at 10 a.m. with the presser, right? We're going to hear, I'm sure, a lot of topics being discussed. But if you take a look at what's going on, let's open up the daily, the 1 hour, and the 5-minute chart as we start our day trading day. A couple things that I want to remind everybody of. There is a job for the time of day. One of the best things that traders can do is realize that there are certain things that we're going to do at certain times of day because the probability is best. So this is just a look at our daily schedule in the morning. I'm with you every morning for 2 hours from 9:20 to about 11:30. So we're going to get our morning prep done, our opening bell intel. We're going to take a look at those hot zones. We already discussed the one at 10 a.m. We understand our sentiment, right? This is mildly bearish on the indices. We want to take a look at our levels. Well, when it comes to a little bit of bearish sentiment, the only index that's in a downtrend right now on the 5-minute chart happens to be the Dow. So there's not a setup that's looming right on the bell. That's a mistake a lot of traders make. So once the bell rings, one of the best things you can do is give everything about 5 or 10 minutes to do two main things. Let the volume come in, right? As these candles of unusual size, these larger candles on the open trigger. And then by about 9:40, we can get a much better feel for the direction of whether we're above or below the previous session close, have trends organized or disorganized. And we'll look at our day trading till about 10:30. We'll take a quick 3 to 5 minute break. I've been kind of edging on the side about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and take a look at our swing trading. We're going to build our watch list because Monday is watch list building day, and we'll send that watch list out to all the members with the specific sectors and the specific stocks that I am going to be looking to set up this week. So if you take a look at our current open trades, those were all from the watch list building that we did on Monday. So now we know which direction to point ourselves in. So with all of the indices below the previous session close, I'm mildly bearish. But I'll say today, gang, it might make a lot of sense. And I would call this a time crunch morning, right? Anytime we have a 10 a.m. hot zone, right? 10 a.m. hot zones mean that there is less time from the bell, right? I'm just going to put this in the notes, from the bell to the time-based optional exit. Meaning, if we know there's an FOMC speaker like Powell, maybe he's doing his testimony, or the president, or a 10 a.m. PMI or JOLTS, those kinds of major economic events that we know can create those large, wicky, volatile candles, I would like to be in a trade. I would prefer personally, right, for any day trade that we take. Now remember, we're not swing trading, not yet, it's too early. I would prefer for any day trade to trigger by really 9:50 a.m. Eastern latest, right? So really that means I have a window of about 9:40 to about 9:50 to see if anything reaches what? Well, what are we scanning for, right? In the morning, what are we scanning for? It's really simple. We're going to be looking for whether or not there's a trend, right? If there's a trend, I'll look at the 34 EMA wave for a mean reversion, right? If there is no trend or trend, it doesn't matter. I'll be looking for my hourly price movement ranges, preferably in agreement with where we are with the previous session close. And then lastly, I'll look at any kind of Darvis pattern that's forming. But again, it's really important to let that least, right? At least the first 5 minutes. There we go. But at least the first 5 minutes after the bell go by. Too many traders kind of act like, that they shoot the gun and like the dogs or the ponies and they're off. Not the job, right? So let's first 5 minutes go by before we do anything. And that's what we're doing right now. Now you'll notice in that 5-minute window, the volume is going to come in, the spreads are going to narrow and normalize, and it's going to give us a far better idea of what exactly today might bring. I would not guess there's going to be a lot of major moves before 10 a.m. because we know there's a hot zone at 10 a.m. That's one of the major edges you get from looking at an economic calendar saying, hey, there is this event coming up at 10 a.m. So if I take a look at the Dow, it looks like the Dow is trying to shake off that early morning downtrend. You can take a look at the indicator at the bottom of my screen. and you'll see that we were in these, see all these magenta colored segments. That's stopped now, and we have one and then in a second now gray non-downtrend segment. That means the downtrend that was visually confirmed by the multi-structure now is going a little bit more neutral. Okay, that's somewhat interesting. What about the NASDAQ? Just going to take a look at NQ. After that first 5 minutes, what's the structure we're dealing with here? Pretty heavy, neutral environment. Notice I don't have a Darvis. Notice I'm nowhere near the hourly price movement ranges. Notice we don't have a trend, right? There's nothing here. So really, let it go down, let it go up, whatever, but there's no setup at the moment in the NAS that I'm looking at. All right, well, let's go and take a look at the Russell, which actually seems to be moving a little bit higher, unlike, there we go, unlike everything else. So before I get to an individual sector, before I get to an individual stock, we want to make sure that that stock or that sector is in alignment with the broader averages, gang, because index sector stock alignment is really important. So the Russell's moving a little bit higher. So that would tell me that here at 937, RTY is above the PSC and KRE is in an uptrend. All right, so KRE is in an uptrend. So we can definitely take a look at that. What else is moving higher? XLY, consumer discretionary, is also, this sector is in an uptrend. So we can keep an eye on that for sure. And XLY means not necessarily that we're going to have liquidity in that, let's go take a look, in that option chain. What else do we have here? Yeah, it doesn't mean that we're going to have liquidity in that option chain, but XLY is actually pretty liquid for August 15. And if it were to pull back to 223, actually, I don't have a lot of open interest below that. So we would have to take a look at Amazon, maybe Tesla as a proxy for the strength in XLY. XLC has, let's see, some nice green candles, not quite a trend, but it's got some bullish momentum. That could be interesting. So what do we see here? There's a couple sectors within the NASDAQ that are moving higher. And here's the most important part. If I see the NAS moving higher, I'll want to go focus on those sectors that have a little bit of a head start, a little bit of jump on that strength. But if the NASDAQ pulls back, I'll likely take a look at names in the XLK, because that seems to be, of the four sectors, the one that's most lagging. So make sure you take an extra 5 minutes or so. There's got to be alignment. It's really difficult for an individual stock to move without a strong narrative or help from the, there we go, or help from the, here we go, from the stock market. So the NAS is kind of heavy, right? And I saw a couple of folks mention, hey, you know, Cisco. Well, until I have a lot of trust that telecommunications and the communications sector are moving higher, and that the NASDAQ is moving higher, I'm not going to presume that Cisco is going to move higher, right? So those are things to remember as we're setting up the morning, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, that first 5 or 10 minutes, easily the first 5, but the first 5 or 10, let's just see what the stocks are willing to do when we look at the sectors they belong to and the index influence. Copper is moving higher. All right. So sometimes we'll have strength in an individual commodity that could shed some light on the sectors. In this case, we have XME moving higher because generally copper, I don't mean it's an uptrend or anything, but it seems to be trying to move higher as copper is moving higher. And a couple folks mentioned Freeport-McMoRan. Sure. So this could be interesting. Freeport-McMoRan could be interesting. Yeah. So let's go take a look at this here and see what we could set up on FCX. So I'm not crazy about Cisco per se, but Freeport could be interesting with the strength in copper. All right. Now, when I'm looking at something like Freeport, it would be the August 15s. and I'd be looking at specifically the 41s. The spread's pretty much normalized at this point. So let's take a look at how we set up an alert for day trading in this room. Now, I don't call audibles. We never just say buy this on the air, but I'm always gonna type in what it is I'm looking for. So here we have Freeport McMoran here at 940, 941. Okay. And I'm looking at the 41 call. So notice I'm not out of the money. I'm either at or in the money. Okay. Now on this one, I'm going to go with a moderate only. And I'm going to go with almost the middle of the range, but we'll use that previous session close. So this would basically be moderate position size, right? So be a moderate position size buy once price reaches 41.87. All right, so that's what I'm looking at there. In terms of my initial target, I'm going to take a look at a T1 scale out, first target scale out at 42.30. And then maybe 42.60, but we'll see what happens. But price has got to get down to this level first. And I'm also going to put a stop loss of 15% of premium paid. That's the first thing on our radar here this morning as we kick off the morning. So again, this could definitely be volatile as we go into the 10 a.m. presser. So I'm not looking at slinging a lot of trades here this morning because we do have that 10 a.m. press conference from the White House, right? But this could be an interesting one to look at. We can keep risk pretty minimal. I don't want to see price get below, say, 41.74, which was the low on that wick, but we could definitely keep an eye on that one. So that's definitely what we're focusing on here this morning. And that's how our opening, say this 20 minutes from 9:20 to 9:40 kind of sets up our morning. All right.